This is American First Patriot Podcast. Defending freedom and liberty is our motto. We put God first and politics second. I'm your Patriot host, Chauncey Brown. Welcome to the show. Tonight, we have the founder of an American Union PAC, a super PAC that wants to address many issues that are affecting Americans all over the country today. The American Union PAC is a non-partisan PAC that supports candidates on both sides of the aisle. This PAC is policy-driven, not political-driven, and that's what makes this PAC so unique. Without any further ado, let me welcome into the studio former state legislator from New Hampshire, Mr. Brian Winters.
Good evening, Chauncey. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show today. For my audience, give us a little background, before you became a legislator, how you got involved in politics. And then I read a little bit about your background, how when you were a state legislature, you moved into the PAC. You were a Democrat, but you saw the, for lack of a better word, inappropriate conduct of other legislators or party leaders and made you want to create a PAC to address issues based on policy versus politics.
Yeah, that's pretty much correct. I was an independent. I worked with third parties, the Libertarian Party 20 years ago, and realized that if you want to get involved with politics, you have to pick a party in order to win. When I was serving in New Hampshire, there was 400 members of the House of Representatives, and they were all elected as Republicans or Democrats. So in 2006, I picked Team Democrat and ended up serving 3 terms in the legislature. And I got a chance to see how the sausage was made from the inside, and got to see how the influence that lobbyists have on crafting our laws and rules. And after I finished up with the legislature, as my kids were growing older, I was looking around the country and realizing that the system just wasn't working, that we needed a better way to do politics. And so from that, the American Union was born as a way to bring together voters and candidates around policy and use that to craft legislative solutions before an election and demand those solutions before the election, and back with our votes. So that's what the American Union does.
Thank you.
A union of swing voters trying to win us a better social contract.
Absolutely. You have a unique insight in the politics because you served as a legislator. I've served as an elected official, appointed, sworn officer. So I understand the mechanisms of politics, if you will, within the framework of government. Most of your average Americans do not understand how politics functions and what really happens, as you've learned, behind the scenes. And at the end of the day, the people suffer. And we've seen this all across the country. We've seen a dramatic change in the last 2 years, and a lot of people are starting to pay more attention to politics. And that's probably the best part of what's going on in our nation today. Some of the issues.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're absolutely correct that most people don't understand how politics works. But that, I don't understand how my smartphone works either. But I can tell whether or not it's working correctly because either it does what I expect it to do or it doesn't. And so the real problem is that government isn't working correctly, that it's not looking out for the American people. It's looking out for special interests, for big interests. And that's the real problem, is that government isn't working correctly. So it sure doesn't hurt when people understand how it works, but I don't have a lot of interest in learning exactly how my smartphone works. I just want it to do the things that it should be doing.
And that's well said. And that's basically what your PAC is about, is looking for candidates that want to represent the American people based on policy. And that's very unique, because most political action committees have a political bent, either right or left. And what you bring to the table is very, very important because you bring the kitchen table issues to the table and you're looking for candidates that are going to serve people and not party and not lobbyists. And that's what makes your PAC extremely unique. And I'm not sure how many super PACs are like yours across the country because, like I said, most of the ones I know of lean either left or right in their bent of political and conservative views or liberal views versus being driven on policy. How do your organization go about looking for candidates? I know right now, I believe that you are working in 10 different swing states: North Carolina, New Hampshire, Nevada, Connecticut, Florida, Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Iowa, and Georgia. I believe correct. On your website you have something that is a criteria for candidates, I believe.
Yeah. So this is a different model. It's a 21st century collaborative democracy. It's a way of upgrading the way that our system works. And just real quick, let me the term PAC can have a negative connotation to it. So I just want to quickly, define that. And what that means is that if you're an organization that's spending more than $1,000 to influence on a federal election, you have to register with the Federal Election Commission. And that's what makes it a PAC, not that there's, shadowy corporations donating money or anything like that, but just that we're spending over $1,000 to try and influence the election. And as a super PAC, what that means is that none of the money that we raise will ever go to any candidate. It will only go towards educating the voting public. And so that's how we're able to accept donations, as long as none of those awesome. Candidates are their committees. So just to clarify, because lots of people, myself included, recognize the oversized influence that big money has in politics, and so PACs kind of can have a negative connotation. But it's simply a tool, and tools can be used for good or for bad, and we're trying to do good. We're trying to find a common ground between Americans by reminding people what the Constitution is about and what we're supposed to be doing, as individuals and as a country, what our responsibilities to each other are. The ones that the framers laid out in the preamble to the Constitution. And so that's the framework that drives our goals. And,
absolutely.
Yeah. And so that's specifically the way that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. There's a delay, Brian. It's okay. Go ahead. I should have paused.
What I was going to say is that, again, this is a different model for 21st century democracy. When the framers wrote the Constitution, the only thing they could do was put everybody into one room in one city and hash out the details of how to pass legislation. But in the 21st century, we don't have those restrictions anymore. We the people can communicate and collaborate across the country. And so we can represent ourselves in crafting policy. We can lobby for ourselves in crafting legislative solutions. And so that's what we've been doing for the last few years is assembling a legislative package with more than 50 different policies in it that will address some of the core issues in America, and offering that legislative package to members of Congress as well as all of the challengers running against them in 2022. And the American Union is a union of swing voters because swing voters are the most powerful voters in the electorate. It just takes a small percentage to decide which direction that a seat goes, whether it's Republican or Democrat. And so by leveraging that power and offering specific solutions to candidates, it gives us an opportunity to build consensus around solutions before the election and to demand enactment before the election in exchange for votes. And it gives us, so let me stop there. I know that's
well stated. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back and talk to Brian Winters, who's the founder of an American Union PAC, and we're going to talk about some of the issues: ending poverty, ending wars, ending mass incarceration, urging Congress to pass bills prior to the midterm elections, but we are here now. So we'll be right back after this brief station break.
On day one, as your governor, I will deploy the Arizona National Guard to the border, and I will begin construction on 3 strategic National Guard border barracks so that we can maintain a permanent presence on the Arizona-Mexico border.
Vote Neely for governor in the August 2nd primary election. Paid for by Neely for Arizona.
Welcome back. This is American First Patriot Podcast. Defending freedom and liberty is our motto. We put God first and politics second. I'm your Patriot host, Chauncey Brown. We're honored and blessed to have in the studio today the founder of an American Union, a political organization that wants to influence legislation on behalf of the people and not political organizations. So let me welcome back Brian Winters.
Thank you.
Brian, talk about how does your organization plan on tackling and raising the level of consciousness about ending poverty?
Yeah, ending poverty. Poverty drives, affects an awful lot of people in this country. We've got about 38 million people who are living below the poverty line. About a third of those are children, and another 100 million Americans who are struggling. And our economy just isn't working for everyone. And so the way that we can address, or the way that we can end poverty is with universal basic income, where every American citizen would get the same amount of cash money for them to address their problems, meet their needs, however they see fit, and enough to bring them up to the poverty line. And this would be coupled with a 12% value-added tax, and so that as people continue to participate in the economy, people who spend the most money will pay it back through a consumption tax. And so that ensures that every American starts above the poverty line, and really addresses a lot of the other issues that we have in this country. Poverty drives crime. It increases our rates of incarceration. It increases our usage of health care. And kids, like I said, there's 12 million kids tonight, Chauncey, that are going to go to sleep in poverty, and it impacts their development. Something that they can carry around can impact them for the rest of their lives. There was a study a few years ago that looked at the cost of childhood poverty and found that for the cohort of children born into poverty each year, that their lifetime costs, society's costs, would be over $1 trillion. And this is one of those many situations where an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That we can solve these problems up front by lifting everyone out of poverty.
Absolutely. Thank you for your organization wanting to tackle issues like poverty. For some reason, politicians on the left and the right have a difficult time trying to come to a conclusion on how they want to address poverty. And like you said, the children across this country and the 100 million Americans barely surviving are suffering. And it's refreshing to hear that there is an organization that is fighting for the people.
Well, I've lost faith in Congress for actually looking out for the people and actually producing solutions. Again, the system just isn't really set up that way. The more problems that exist, the more opportunities there are for them to fundraise and say, give money to my campaign, elect me, and I will solve these problems. But then they don't. And polarization has really impacted the ability of Congress to to address some of these larger issues. And actually, if you don't mind, if I could back up just a little bit.
Yes,
so
sir.
these solutions are laid out in our legislative package. You can read it on the website, which is anamericanunion.com. And it's broken out into the five titles for each of the duties that's in the preamble to the Constitution. And if we got time there, we can go through those briefly and talk a little bit more about some of the policies that are in this legislative package and why they're important to addressing our core issues.
Sure. I think that those issues are extremely important. Let's go to your blueprint on your website. You have multiple categories. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so, we all remember learning the preamble back in grade school, that we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. And that's really sort of like our prime directive, our duty as Americans, is forming that more perfect union, not to be perfect, but always to strive to do better, to always strive to improve ourselves, and to work together, to cooperate. A lot of people like to talk about America as a nation of individuals, but it's really working together in cooperation, country what it is today. And our first duty in the preamble is to establish justice. And we are failing to establish justice when we have 2 million Americans who wake up behind bars every single day. A far higher percentage than any other civil and industrialized nation. And America is not the most evil country in the world. But something has gone terribly wrong with our criminal justice system. And
well, if I may comment a little bit on the criminal justice system. I think once the criminal justice system and the prison system became privatized and it's on the stock market, it's about making money. It's not about rehabbing individuals that are incarcerated. It's about taking care of their shareholders. Mm-hmm. And that is the sad part about the federal prison system. And most people don't know that the federal prison system is a corporation. It's a private entity that is on the stock market. And I don't know, I hope that we can move towards fixing it. But the corruption is so bad in our country, where it's almost we are going against the storm, and my hat is off to you for the courage to identify these issues in your organization, tackling, holding members of Congress accountable. We need more organizations like yours that do not take a political position, but take a policy position to solve people's problems. And that's probably the biggest problem today is the two-party system.
Yes.
I woke you up on that one, huh? My personal opinion about the two-party system in and of itself is not a choice. It's like a Chinese menu. This is all you have to choose from, and that's not a choice. And that leaves challenges for the American people. We need more political parties, but that's been taken away from the early 1800s from the Whig Party and all the other parties, and standing as a Republican and Democrats. And we know today that the Democrats and Republicans at the top level of the echelons are all in cahoots together to maintain power and control. And you even mentioned about the problems that Congress faces. Most of the problems that America has today has been created by politicians. And they don't want to fix them because it justifies their reason for continuing to run, lying to the people that they're going to fix the problems that they created, and they never do. But I'll let you chip in now, because I'll be rambling on, and so then you'll hear my disdain for the federal government and for politics. And
well, you're absolutely right. George Washington, the framers, they warned us about political parties, or factions, as they used to call them, and said they were destructive for society. And you see that today. The Democrats and Republicans they stand more for opposing the other party than for any rock solid principle. And part of that, a large part of that, is just a function of the way that we elect people, that we have all these single member districts, and that tends to produce a two-party system where there's always a party in power and a party trying to get in power. And it's just sort of the way that our country is set up. And so we can skip past that by creating our own metric, by having a set of legislative policies and saying, look, this is how we're going to decide how we're going to cast our votes. So instead of letting them divide us into Republicans and Democrats, we can pit them against each other, incumbents versus challengers. Incumbents, get this done, and then we'll let you stay on for a couple more years. But if you don't, we can replace you with the challengers. And so we can, our second duty in the preamble is to ensure domestic tranquility. And when people in Congress, when politicians, when they purposely polarize Americans, when they purposely get us riled up and try and persuade us to hate each other, they are doing the complete opposite of what they've sworn to do when they say they'll uphold the Constitution. So if we want to ensure domestic tranquility, we've got to work together as Americans and not let partisan politics divide us.
Absolutely. And that reminds me, when these Congress persons put their hand on the Bible or put their hand on the Quran, they swear, and I put my hand on the Bible. I've been appointed, I've been elected, I've been sworn. And what I realized that, I happen to be a religious person, but that's my thing. But when you take your oath of office, you're not only swearing your oath of office to the Constitution of the United States, you're putting your hand on the Bible and the laws that are within it. And I think a lot of people forget that. They're happy to raise their right hand, they're happy to put their hand on the Bible, but there's consequences to that act. And it's sad to watch some Congress persons in our Congress today, and even some administrations, totally ignore the Constitution. It baffles me. It really baffles me because, when you take an oath of office, it's like once they've taken the oath, they forgot what that oath means. And that's extremely troubling. There's no more integrity. There's no more morals.
Well, and unfortunately, part of that is the way that the system is set up, right? Where, if you that congressmen, they spend most of their time on the phone making fundraising calls. That, if they want to move ahead in leadership, they've got to raise millions of dollars for their party. And so they're not there to actually do the work of passing laws and as much as they are there to fundraise. And again, we've completely lost track of what we're supposed to be doing. What the preamble is our mission statement as a country, the things we're supposed to be doing. And so I guess not to bounce around too much, but a lot of people these days get focused on the amendments that came afterwards on the Bill of Rights. Mm-hmm. And, those are all good things, but they weren't the point of the Constitution. That's why there are amendments after the fact. The point of the Constitution was a framework for government and the way that, to set it up in a way that would benefit everyone, so we'd all come out ahead. And so we need to bring the focus back to the beginning of the Constitution and the preamble and the things that we're supposed to be doing, and judging ourselves on whether or not we're succeeding or whether we're not. And to your point about the prison industrial complex and mass incarceration, you're absolutely right that we've lost focus on rehabilitation. Instead, somehow the focus has gotten shifted to punishment. And I've got kids, and they they do things wrong occasionally, and none of us is perfect. But when you've got to punish somebody, you got to do it with love. You've got to do it with the intention of guiding them towards better behavior in the future, and then supporting them so that to help them make better decisions in the future. You can't just lock them in the room for 50 years and then say, or till they're an adult and come out and say, all right, well, now you're supposed to know everything that you need to know. Too much of our prison system today sets people up for failure. And so our legislative package has a number of reforms, including restoring access to Pell Grants, because we know that education is a proven way to reduce recidivism, ending some of the practices like solitary confinement, which when you lock somebody up into a small space for days, weeks, months, even years at a time, does not do good things for their mental health, and does not make it any easier to reacclimate with society when they come out. And so reforming a lot of these things and trying to recognize the humanity in all of us, recognize that people who've made mistakes, people who are incarcerated are still human beings. They're still capable of self-improvement and redemption, and they should be treated that way.
Amen. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with the founder of an American Union PAC, former New Hampshire state legislator, Brian Winters.
Another important issue facing Arizona is election integrity. And regardless of how you feel about past elections, we must move forward with legislation that ensures that our voting system is safe and fair, because that's the only way we can restore the Arizona Republic.
Vote Neely for governor in the August 2nd primary election. Paid for by Neely for Arizona.
Welcome back to American First Patriot Podcast. Defending freedom and liberty is our motto, and we put God first and politics second. I'm your Patriot host, Chauncey Brown. I'm honored and blessed and proud to have in the studio former New Hampshire state legislator Brian Winters, founder of an American Union PAC, an organization driven by policy and not politics. I'm honored to have you on the show. These issues are extremely important to the American people, and your organization wants to cut through the minutia, for a lack of a better term at this moment, to get the help that the people need and to lean on our legislators at the federal level to do the right thing. If not, we will kick them out of office and put other individuals in that are going to represent the people. That's what an American Union PAC is about. I support them, I endorse them, and I will be promoting an American Union PAC on all of my social media platforms. As well, all of my listeners tuning into the show, if you want to go to their website, in the description of our show is a link to AmericanUnion.com. You can go view the legislative agenda, all the policy issues that they're addressing. Also, I noticed that in October, Brian, your organization is going to be announcing your candidates that you will be supporting for office. Is that correct?
That's correct. Again, we've got a legislative package that addresses all these things: ends poverty, ends mass incarceration, and ends the endless wars. And when you season your food, when you put salt on your food, you don't care about which particular pieces of salt come out of the shaker. You just want to improve the flavor of your meal. And so we don't care which particular candidates, which particular Republicans or Democrats will put this legislation on the president's desk. We just want it done. We just want Congress to solve some problems already. I mean, they have the ability. We've seen it many times where they quickly advance some piece of legislation and move it right through with no problems. They have the power, and they're just choosing not to do it. So as the framers intended, every 2 years we get a chance to hold them directly accountable with our votes. And so by writing our own legislative solutions, we have our own metric to hold them accountable to. Republicans and Democrats alike, solve these problems or get out of the way for someone who will.
Amen. Quick question. How do candidates qualify for your endorsement? Do they go to the website? Is there an application process, or how does it work if a candidate, say for instance, if candidates want to reach out to you for funding or support, how would they be screened? I guess I'm asking for potential candidates that might be listening.
Yeah. So again, as a super PAC, we cannot donate to any candidate or candidates committee or coordinate with them directly.
Right. Okay.
Again, we're about policy and not particular politicians. But when it comes to the endorsement process, essentially on October 15th of this year, we are holding our own election and offering all candidates for Congress to compete for the American Union endorsement and across Twitter. And let me back up just a little bit more.
Yeah, please. I'm intrigued by this now.
Well, yeah, and thank you again for having me on. This isn't something that really fits into a 30-second soundbite. But our political system is broken, and fixing it, is a little more complex than, just change, anyways. We talked briefly about refocusing on constitutional duties that are in the preamble instead of rights. And so duties is accepting our responsibility to each other. It's something that you willingly take on. And so one of the ways that the American Union demonstrates our willingness to accept these responsibilities for steering America in the right direction and being the deciders in the election is through a monthly fast, a 24-hour fast on the 15th of each month. Have you ever tried fasting, Chauncey?
Yes, sir.
And you know probably that it can be a powerful and profound experience. It may be because it is about willingly giving something up. It is willingly sacrificing something, especially in a group, as a group, sacrificing something for a greater cause. And fasting, this legislative package, nobody likes everything in it, myself included. It requires everyone to make some compromises. And fasting and compromises they're two sides of the same coin. It's willingly giving something up. And so our group fast on the 15th of each month is a fast for peace. And say, look, we have to come together. We have to solve some problems. America cannot keep going the way that it's going. We've got to change directions. And so the people who participate in the group fast say, yes, we want to work together to solve these problems. And so on October 15th is a fast for peace. And we're inviting everyone in America who is willing to pool their votes, who's willing to work together to be a decider and to steer this country back towards our constitutional duties, to participate in the fast for peace and share it on social media, on Twitter, with the hashtag Fast for Peace. Now, for the candidates for Congress in 2022, this is their opportunity to take up these demands or to reject them. And so this is our metric for holding them accountable. Incumbents who participate in the fast and share it on Twitter, they have first dibs on our endorsement. And then they will have 10 days to act to put this legislation on the president's desk by October 26th. If they do that, every incumbent who supported this legislation and participated in the fast on the 15th will get our endorsement. This is the carrot. This is how we can de-escalate the 2022 election, how we can come together around solving these problems, ending poverty, ending mass incarceration, ending the endless wars.
Thank you. And just real briefly, since you mentioned Twitter, I just want to let my followers know that I went to Twitter. If you're on Twitter right now, please go at an American Union, follow, and hit the notification button so you'll be able to get all the updates from Brian Winters and the organization. I just followed, and I just wanted to, so in other words, for the candidates for 2022, they would have to put the hashtag FAST?
Yes, hashtag fast for peace. All one, fast for peace. All one word, lowercase.
Okay.
Then the challenge for the challengers, their major party challengers, is to do the same thing, is to take up these demands and say, we're willing to pool our votes and we're willing to support the incumbent if they get this done before the election. Congress has the power. If they refuse to act before the election, then the challengers can earn our endorsement. But if the challengers join us and we're successful in pressuring Congress to pass this before the election, then the challengers will be expected to endorse the incumbent in 2022, and because if they meet our terms, if they meet our demands, and so that's the gamification aspect of it, where challengers who are willing to take up these demands, if they are successful, then they're agreeing to pass on the 2022 election, because by working together and pooling our votes, we can accomplish so much more than any one individual any one candidate can.
Absolutely.
I hope that makes sense.
Oh, it does make sense. Of course, I'm gonna have to review and listen to the podcast again. But no, you shared a lot of information in 40 minutes. We have about 11 minutes, 15 minutes left. Yeah. What would you like, before we continue, though, if anyone would like to donate, and we're going to repeat it again towards the end of the podcast, if they want to donate to an American Union, I believe they can go to the website www.anamericanunion.com. There is a donation link there. I encourage everyone, please, to go donate. And the reason why I say donate to American Union PAC, and I very rarely say donate to anyone, is because this is a non-partisan organization that is working on behalf of the people and not a political party. And that's why I'm urging, if you can, whatever you can, please, your money, your donation will not be wasted. It's going to help establish policy-driven legislation to benefit the people and not the party. Go ahead, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And, we talked a few minutes ago about how incarcerated Americans, how they're worthy of redemption and capable of self-improvement. Mm-hmm. And if we really want to see every American succeed, we have to give that same opportunity to the 535 members of Congress. And so this is a good faith offer saying, look, get these policies on the president's desk before the election, and we'll help you succeed. We'll give you another term in office. But you've got to take action first, because unfortunately politicians don't have the greatest reputation for keeping their campaign promises.
I agree. And, if they could write a check for $14 billion to Ukraine, we could have solved the poverty issue and homeless issue with veterans in this country. But that's
Absolutely.
my take. That's my take, But it's a shame what Congress has been doing with the American dollars. Go ahead, Brian. This is your show.
well, let's see if we can hit the other duties in the preamble. And the next one is providing for the common defense. And as you probably know, the framers were very concerned about a standing army that they put in the Constitution and prohibited Congress from appropriating money for more than 2 years at a time. And they even actually debated requiring like a supermajority vote in Congress to have a standing army. But in 2022, we're approaching $1 trillion a year. I think $813 billion, I think, is what President Biden is proposing for next year. And we spend more on our military than the next 10 largest countries combined. We have around 800 foreign military bases all around the planet. And we've far exceeded our mandate to provide for the common defense. And so our legislation would require a 10% cut in the military budget for 4 years. and would require us to close down some of our foreign military bases around the globe. It would also repeal the authorizations for military force from back in 2001, 2002. Now, these were blank checks that are still being cashed today. That whatever the goal was 20 years ago when Congress passed those is not applicable today, and so Congress needs to reassert its part in declaring war. And if it wants to, if we need to be involved in hostilities, Congress needs to step up and pass a new resolution, and we can't just lean on ones from decades and decades ago. The other part of this title is improving our moral standing in the world. And one of those things is ending the use of economic sanctions against civilian populations, where we cut off entire countries from trading with the United States. And Cuba is one of the best examples. I say best, but it's one of the biggest examples of this, where we're continuing to punish an entire nation for something that happened back in the 1950s. And sanctions they're a form of collective punishment, and they impact the poor, the most vulnerable members of society far more than the people at the top. And so it is unjust for us to punish entire countries that way. So we would end that practice, with a few exceptions, for during time of war or as part of larger groups. But in general, right now we have sanctions on close to 40 different countries around the globe. And too many people are suffering as a result of those policies, and tens of thousands are dying as a result. So we would end that policy.
But we can't put sanctions on our border.
Can't put sanctions on our border.
I'm being facetious, meaning we can sanction countries, but we can't secure our border. I was being facetious.
Gotcha.
Brian, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back to close out with some of your final thoughts. Okay?
All right.
I want to be your infrastructure governor. Now, I've been involved in infrastructure construction throughout Arizona during the last 17 years. I've traveled more than 500,000 miles across Arizona roads, and I've watched the roads decay over the last 17 years. Rural communities need special attention with infrastructure dollars, and as your infrastructure dollar watchdog, I want to make sure that your tax dollars are spent on the right projects in the right places.
Vote Neely for governor in the August 2nd primary election. Paid for by Neely for Arizona.
Welcome back to American First Patriot Podcast. Defending freedom and liberty is our motto. We put God first and politics second. I'm your Patriot host, John C. Brown. Welcome back. We're honored and proud and blessed to have in the studio former New Hampshire state legislator Brian Winters, the founder of an American Union PAC that is a political action committee that is driven by policy and not by politics. Brian, this has been an extremely informative and impactful podcast with a lot of information, and I know that we didn't cover everything. We'll cover a few more things in a couple of minutes, but I hope that you would come back on again, because the information you're sharing and what your organization is doing is very, very important for the American people to know that you are working on behalf of them. And I want to say thank you personally for what you're doing for America.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk with you tonight. And I'd love to cover a few more policies for your audience to kind of give them the overview. But yeah, this is a different way of doing democracy. When we had the War of Independence and we threw off, we created democracy instead of a monarchy. There was more focus on rights, because rights was was a protection from abuse of authority from above. And so rights were a shield. But in the 21st century, we can have a crowdsourced government. We can have crowdsourced collaborative democracy. And that's a bottom-up power structure instead of the old top-down power structure. And so this bottom-up structure is one based on duty, on what do we owe each other, how can we work together, what are the goals that we can work together to accomplish. And so it is a very, very different model than the way that things are run today. But it's one that, it's an upgrade for American democracy, or can be, because it doesn't require changing any law. It doesn't require amending the Constitution. It doesn't require changing the way we vote. It doesn't require forming a third party or getting ballot access or raising millions and millions of dollars to compete against the entrenched interests. All it requires is that we, the people, want to work together, and that we commit ourselves to working together to solve these problems. And as a union of swing voters, you just need a small percentage to control the balance of power in Washington and have leverage over the system. We estimate 3.5% is what it will take, and that's why we're focused on 10 swing states this election cycle. And if we can hit that 3.5% union of swing voters, that will change the conversation in this country, and America will know that there's a better way to do things.
Brian, listening to you and listening to you talk about the organization, what stands out to me the most is you're bringing back the Constitution, the original Constitution, not the amendments, not the Bill of Rights. You're bringing back the Constitution for the attention of all pay attention to before they legislate. Legislate based on the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very unique what you bring to the table in your super PAC. And I'm very proud to have you on to talk about these issues, and I'm going to be a big proponent of what you do because it's critical. Your organization will serve and is serving as a check and balance to our elected leaders. And that is important. You're right. We have to change how we do business, because the way that this country is doing business is harming Americans and rewarding illegals. And I can't believe at 60 years old that I am looking at a country. I could never imagine as a child growing up in the 60s and 70s that America would look the way it does today. I thank God that my children are all adults except I have a teenager, because it's very, very difficult raising a child in today's immoral environment. They're trying to indoctrinate our children with this false sense of oppression, victimization, identity, and then you want to throw in all these other Fruit Loop characters coming in there, calling whatever they call themselves, the trans whatever Vesta. I don't even know what you call these people, reading to our children. I mean, I can't even believe that parents would allow, I can't even understand the mindset of parents that would allow their children to sit there. And I was on Twitter today, and I saw, I don't even know what you call them, a transvestite. I'm not even sure what they're called, but this person is almost in gear like they're in a go-go bar, and you have parents and little children there stuffing dollars. I'm like, I can't believe what I'm witnessing as a 60-year-old man. I mean, this stuff I'm tongue-tied. I always have to remember, God will not be mocked. Every man will reap what he sows. These things that are happening in our society and to our children are not only disgusting, but extremely troubling. And then for the federal government and the Justice Department months ago, when parents wanted to stand up against CRT, to call them domestic terrorists. I mean, where is this country going? When does right become wrong and wrong has become right? I hope and pray every day that things will get better. And I hope that I'll see it before I pass. But I'm very troubled by the immoral state of this country and what our government is doing to our people. And they care more about giving benefits to illegals than they do American veterans and American homeless. I mean, we have so many challenges from mental illness, drugs, and we're more concerned about taking care of other countries instead of taking care of our own home. Please, I want to let you close out with any comments before we close out the show.
Yeah. So I guess I just, I agree with you that there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed. This legislative package doesn't get into identity politics. Identity politics generally serve to divide us as Americans, and instead focus on ensuring basic fair, just treatment for all Americans.
Amen.
And again, so our universal basic income program is called the American Union Jobs Program. Not that it's employment in the traditional sense, but that it's a reminder that we as Americans have duties to each other. It's it's an unconditional $300 a week to go be a better American. And, because people do all sorts of things that are valuable in their communities, from, coaching little league teams, from volunteering on the PTA, just raising kids. These are all valuable things that aren't employment. And so your American Union job is an unconditional way of supporting people in doing those valuable things in their communities.
Right.
And
so much.
It would lift up every single American citizen up above the poverty line. And then you can use capitalism to build as high as you want from there. But in the richest, greatest country in the world, there's no reason that any of our people should be living in poverty. We can do better. We can solve these problems by working together. And that's what the American Union is trying to offer America, a better way to work together in 2022 to solve these problems.
Brian, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on my podcast and for the courage to stand up for what is right. It's ironic that today standing up for right is a rarity, because everybody is normally driven towards economic gains. Thank you again for your courage to stand up and to try to bring balance back to America in tackling issues that directly affect the American people. Thank you so much. It was an honor to have you on, and I hope that when you have time in the near future, you'll come back and give us an update, or we can get more in depth on your legislative and policy issues that you'd like to see Congress address prior to November, if possible.
That would be great. Thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk with you. And yeah, I'd love to chat again. There's a lot of policy detail in here, and just like our smartphone, you don't need to necessarily know how all of it works, but it's good to have an understanding of the basics. And there's a lot of solutions that we can enact that will improve the quality of life for all Americans.
Thank you very much. God bless you and your family, and we will be in touch. And thanks again, Brian.
Thank you.
For those that are tuning in, you're listening to American First Patriot Podcast. Defending freedom and liberty is our motto, putting God first and politics second. I'm your Patriot host, Chauncey Brown. Today in the studio, we were honored to have the founder of an American Union PAC that is policy-driven, not party-driven. Very unique concept today in our society when everything is driven by identity politics and how much money one candidate has versus another. Brian Winter's organization puts in check incumbents and challengers to see where they stand on the Constitution in their ability to serve people and not political interest or the political party. I urge all of my followers, if you can, to please visit and follow an American Union on Twitter, and the website is www.anamericaniunion.com. If you're able to donate, please donate. This organization is representing you in the issues that we face, from poverty, mass incarceration, and endless wars. So please, if you're able to donate $1, $5, whatever you're able to donate will help America and will help us keep congresspersons and federal office holders in check and hold them accountable for what they're supposed to do. And that's represent all of the people and not some of the people. I want to thank all our followers for tuning in today to American First Patriot Podcast. I also want to say thank you. We've eclipsed in a couple of months over 8,000 followers on Twitter. I can't thank you all enough for your support and your comments across all social media. Thank you so much. If you're able to donate to American First Patriot Podcast, please consider. You can cash app us at USA First Podcast. Cash app us at USA First Podcast. And I forgot what the PayPal link is if you do PayPal, but next time I'll have it ready. We want to thank all of you for your donations. We don't accept donations from big corporations. So what you hear is the truth. What you hear is our opinion and our voices, and is not influenced by any money. And the people that I have on my show are normally not politicians. They are American patriots trying to work for the American people. We're here every Monday and Wednesday from 7, 8 o'clock. We'll be here again on Wednesday. I believe we're going to have in the studio Oklahoma State Senator Shane Jett will be here. So I want to thank everybody again for your support for tuning in. God bless you all, and as always, keep the faith. Good night now.